Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of Dog Walk Talk presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos. And with me, as always, the man himself, the illustrious beat writer over at DawgsHQ, Palmer Toms. PT, what's good with you, brother?
Doing well. Just made the trip back to Nashville for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Jake. I know we're recording this on Wednesday, but we'll go out on Thursday. So happy Thanksgiving to all you listeners. We're certainly thankful that you're a part of our DawgsHQ family. And happy to have you along for the ride with us. Certainly been a fun one so far this season, and next step in that in that process is Georgia Tech this coming Saturday.
Boy, yeah, Georgia fans got a lot to be thankful for this year, I should say. Looking like a shoe-in for the playoff, all things considered. I posted on Twitter the other day, Auburn on a 3-game losing streak. Georgia Tech just got their ass whooped, and Florida's without a coach. So a lot to be thankful for if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan this week, I think, but throughout this season as well. And like you said, Georgia Tech on the schedule this upcoming weekend. Clean old-fashioned hate. It is a rivalry game. It is what it is. But I got to tell you, Palmer, I've had people speaking to me about this in the same breath that they spoke about Charleston Southern. I mean, people are just not giving a lot of respect to these Yellow Jackets. And I get why. When you look at the numbers, it kind of bears that out. And, probably pretty damning when you're thinking about Jeff Collins, especially a defensive-minded guy. You're talking about the number 114 total defense in all of college football in the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And it's not much better on offense. Number 79 in total offense. Just not a recipe for a lot of wins. That's why they find themselves 3-8 coming into this game. But you look at it, and they've got a couple. At least I think they're a little bit surprising. A 45-22 win over UNC, which has been pretty good the rest of the season. A win over Duke, and then Kennesaw State, your other one. So maybe not that surprising that they were able to take down the Owls. But, that UNC win, that's not a bad win to have on your resume. But 3-8 is what it is. Georgia 11-0 coming into this one. I guess breaking it down, Palmer, looking ahead, what do you see in this matchup, if anything? I mean, is there anything that scares you for Georgia's chances? Any players they're going to have to contain? I mean, and from where I'm sitting, just doesn't seem like a lot of that.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Georgia Tech team, Jahmyr Gibbs is certainly the most talented player on this roster that Jeff Collins has recruited. He's a playmaker in the ACC, and speaking with some Georgia Tech people, he's a guy that a lot of teams in the ACC would like to have. Averages 12.82 yards per attempt. Excuse me.
I was about to say that boy going to win Heisman for 12
per game. 5.28 yards per attempt. Not too shabby. And he's played in 11 games, 745 yards, 4 touchdowns. It has been pretty limited in terms of his yards per game, but he's a playmaker in the return game. He's a playmaker, whenever the ball is in his hands. Also among Georgia Tech's leading receivers, 35 receptions, 474 yards, 2 touchdowns there. In terms of the quarterbacks, I think that's a talking point this week for Georgia Tech, and it has been for the last couple of weeks with Jordan Yates expected to make the start. Backup coming into the season, he's started started 5 games for them coming into Saturday, likely to make his 6th. In place of Jeff Sims, who is certainly an athletic guy, but has been banged up, wearing a boot on his right foot. I think that if you're Georgia Tech, you don't have. I mean, obviously this is a rivalry game, and you want to play your best game against the number 1 team in the country. You want to send your seniors out on a high note. Would be one of the highest notes of their careers if they were able to knock off the number 1 ranked team, and in their careers that way. I don't see it happening. I know. I mean, we talked about setting a line for this game, and I said 42, and you thought that was too low. Vegas set it at 35.
Yeah.
So if you're a betting man, that could be of interest to you. I just, I don't see anything that really scares me about this Georgia Tech team. Like I said, Gibbs is a talented player, but Georgia, he's running behind an offensive line that has a walk-on starting. That is not a recipe for success against Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter or Devontae Wyatt or Trayvon Walker or Nakobe Dean or Channing Tindall or Quay Walker. The list goes on and on and on. And you could probably get into the second team guys for Georgia. I mean, sure. Nazir Stackhouse could probably dominate this Georgia Tech offensive line. I think that, like you said, there's a lot of people talking about this game in the same breath as Charleston Southern, and Kirby Smart won't be one to do that, but he's certainly glad that he's not having to play a ranked Arkansas team in a physical game and then going on the road to play Auburn, ahead of an SEC championship. He's certainly counting his blessings that he's got Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech to round out the season. I think if you're Georgia, this is kind of in the same boat as that Charleston Southern game where you want to get your guys in, get ahead, and get out of there. Get out of there healthy, get the guys out of the game, get them rested, noon kickoff. So, you will have more time to get those guys back to Athens, especially playing on the road. You want to get back to Athens and start preparing for Alabama as soon as possible. They've probably already been preparing for Alabama. Kirby, like we said, Kirby would never admit to that. But my guess is that they've at least done some Alabama prep over the last couple of weeks. With the Crimson Tide now officially locked in, I feel like there might be even more of that. But I do think that Kirby has a lot of respect for this rivalry, having played in it, having coached in it, and having grown up in the state of Georgia. I think that obviously he's from South Georgia, so maybe some of the Georgia-Florida rivalry was a little bit more meaningful to him. But for folks in Atlanta, where there is a major recruiting base, where there's a major alumni base, this is a big rivalry game.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I really do think that Jeff Collins has done a pretty okay job when it comes to recruiting at Georgia Tech. I think that he's really pulled in some good players. He's done a great job utilizing the transfer portal. I mean, you see guys like Kenyatta Watson Jr. You see guys like, there's Miles Sims from Michigan was another guy who transferred. Derek Allen was at Notre Dame. I mean, these are familiar names to Georgia fans, especially if you're talking about recruiting, 3 and 4 years ago. These are guys that were kind of on everybody's radar. And so he's done a good job, I think, of building in state. Like you mentioned, Jahmyr Gibbs was a kid that, Georgia wasn't chasing all that heavily after. I thought they should have. I think that he's an excellent player. But Jameis Griffin was another guy. I mean, just a number of guys on this roster you might recognize. But like you said, probably in the important spots, it really hasn't come through for them to some degree. The offensive line is what it is. It's still kind of growing there. But there's some guys. But the reality is, Georgia Tech's 3-8. Their defense has been really bad. Their offense hasn't been much better. Georgia's been fantastic on both ends of that spectrum. So I think we will see a heavy dose of the second team and perhaps even the third team, as we did against Charleston Southern. I think that's probably why you saw the line be what it is, because Georgia's probably going to dip into those reserves. Maybe they won't be able to produce quite the same, but they're going to be able to get in there and have some opportunities as well. And Georgia Tech's probably going to keep their top flight guys in there, if just to. See where they think
for pride's sake. Pride's sake,
right.
To get some of these guys that have spent years and years and years in the program to get them some reps and again, not necessarily going out on a high note if you are losing in the fashion that Vegas expects, but maybe having a moment, a big tackle for loss or something that you can feel proud about going out in your senior day style. Yeah, I think looking at this Georgia Tech defense, something that stands out to me, and it's probably because of a factor of the offenses they've played, a factor of their offense not being able to be on the field. It is interesting to see that the top 5 leading tacklers for the Yellow Jackets are all have more tackles than Georgia's leading tackler, Channing Tindall, who has 55 on the year. You've got Quez Jackson, who's got 97.
Peach County boy.
What's that?
He's out of Peach County, like Kieris Jackson.
Yeah,
they played together in high school. I had a chance to watch them.
Yeah, you've got a Maryland transfer in Ace Ely who's got 86. Both of those guys are top 10 in the ACC in terms of tackles. Wanye Thomas is top 15 in tackles. He's got 76. So, this is a team that has some players that can hang. But I think that the talent that Georgia, the biggest difference here is what they've recruited. The talent that Georgia has recruited versus the talent that Georgia Tech has recruited. Yes. I think that's a factor of making that transition from Paul Johnson to Jeff Collins. I think Collins has done a much better job of recruiting at Georgia Tech than what Johnson was doing. Obviously, it's 2 completely different styles. I mean, you're finally seeing Georgia Tech run shotgun under Jeff Collins. I remember I thought it was funny when during that spring game and he lined up under center and then they backed out into the shotgun and all the fans cheered. Kind of transitioning, signifying that transition from an old age offense to maybe trying to do a little bit new age stuff. I think that Collins is making steps in the right direction. I mean, they've got a top 25 recruiting class in the country this year. I think that there's enough talent in the state of Georgia to go around for any team that comes in here, and especially if you're a team that's based in Atlanta, right in the heart of the state. It plays in a Power 5 conference. It's not the SEC, but it's not the AAC. It's not some small conference. It's the ACC, and you're going to be playing big games against Notre Dame or Clemson or North Carolina or whatever. You'll have an opportunity to be on a national spotlight in the ACC more than you would in some of these smaller conferences. And so, with what Georgia comes in and tries to, you're seeing Georgia and Alabama and Auburn and Clemson and Tennessee and Florida and all these teams come to Atlanta, come to the state of Georgia to recruit. It makes South Carolina is another one. I just, that is a border state there. You're seeing those teams come to the state of Georgia to recruit, but on the guys that those teams may overlook, Jahmyr Gibbs would be a great example there. There are still talented players in the Peach State that Georgia Tech can bring in. So I think that Collins is making steps in the right direction. I just don't see it playing out that way on Saturday. Looking at the talent differential, the recruiting differential, and quite frankly, the differential in results that we've seen on the field between Georgia and Georgia Tech.
Well, I mean, if the guy's going to do it, he's going to have time. I mean, there's no question about it.
It was a huge transition.
Sure. 3 games won through his first 3 seasons. I mean, 3 games each year, 3 in 2020, 3 in 2019, 3-9 that year, 3-7 last year during the COVID year, and 3-8 this year. I mean, there's frustration for sure amongst the Georgia Tech fan base. But like you said, I mean, look, Florida, this is not okay. This is not that gig. And also, too, you're not having to revitalize so much. Like you said, they were kind of stuck in that old school offense, that triple option. It's really difficult to get away from, especially in the modern game and transitioning into the modern game. That's something that's going to take, I would say, I mean, I would give the guy 5 years. Because I think you can accurately judge where things are once you've completely cleared house of the previous regime here. Also, I think that
Collins needs to be able to see one of his recruiting classes all the way through to have any chance to see that transition.
But hey, we're not here today to defend Jeff Collins because this is a Georgia show, and we're pretty sure he's going to get rocked on Saturday. In terms of Saturday, I guess offensively, how do you think we'll see this quarterback situation break down?
I think it's going to be a lot of what we have seen over the last couple of weeks. Stetson Bennett to start. JT Daniels can come in when Georgia is handedly ahead. Whether that is in the first half or second. I mean, it took until the second half last weekend. Did he get it in the second quarter now that I think about it?
JT?
I can't remember, but anyways, I think that the snap count, the distribution of snaps will be very similar to what we've seen in weeks past. It's going to be interesting. And I just put out the red shirt report, looking at some of the impact that freshmen have made this year. It's going to be interesting to see some of those guys that have an opportunity to play. You don't have anybody that can burn a red shirt playing in this game, at least among those true freshmen. You've got a couple guys that have played in 3 games, and they've got 4 games that they can play in without burning it. So it's going to be interesting to see some of those guys, again, likely get an opportunity to grow and develop.
Anybody of particular interest to you on that, kind of right on that cusp, this being their 4th game, and maybe, if you're going to save them, should you save them for an SEC championship? Should you save them for a potential playoff game?
Xavier Sorey would be the one that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Just because I think and I wrote this earlier this week, but Kirby has said that Sorey has come a long way. He moved from outside linebacker to inside linebacker just because he doesn't have the size, the speed to hang out with an outside linebacker. In terms of what they need at that position. They need somebody that can really hold an edge, somebody that's big and physical, a guy like Robert Beal, that may be more the way that Georgia uses their outside linebackers. And we've had this discussion on the board this week, with people pointing to that position as maybe a position of need in the transfer portal. The way that Georgia uses their outside linebackers, it's more like a 4-3 defensive end than it is a true 3-4 outside linebacker. Because you've seen 3 inside linebackers on the field at the same time. That, to me, that just signifies that they think, we can put a quote unquote outside linebacker, walk him down to the line of scrimmage, and then have the other 3 guys be inside linebackers, put Nakobe Dean in the middle, put Quay Walker and Channing Tindall on the outside. Both those guys have the ability to cover sideline to sideline. They have the ability to get after the passer. They have the ability to cover in space. I think that the way that Georgia uses the so-called outside linebacker is more as a defensive end. I know both of us have talked to Michael Williams, and that he's mentioned that they have mentioned him playing a little bit of that outside linebacker role. He's being recruited by most places as a defensive lineman. I think you see that with Trayvon Walker. They've dropped him back in space, just different looks from the outside linebacker. So as it relates to Sorey, him making that move to inside, I think that he has, an opportunity to grow. I don't know if we're going to see him move back outside after this season, after he's got a full off season, because he came in banged up, was injured during the spring, limited in what he could do. I don't know if he's going to move back to the outside with a full off season of work and strength and conditioning program, but it certainly is interesting to see because he made some plays, with Georgia being limited. Kirby said they made the move because of what he was, that he didn't have that size and speed and strength, but also because of what they didn't have. They lost Tresman Marshall. They lost Ryan Davis. They needed guys at that inside linebacker group. And it's interesting because they also need guys at outside linebacker with the loss of Adam Anderson. Nolan Smith has been banged up. You didn't see him in the game on Saturday. So they need guys at outside linebacker too. Don't get me wrong. But I think that they feel comfortable using Channing Tindall, Quay Walker as a quote unquote outside linebacker there. Doing a lot of the same things that group does, that your traditional outside linebacker does. So Sorey is one that I would watch. Both him and Lavassier Carroll have played in 3 games. I don't see them needing Carroll as much as they may need Sorey. I don't know that they need Sorey, but he could be of help, could be a benefit there. After that, it's a lot of guys that have, Nyland Green and Brock Vandegrift have played in 2 games.
I think we have to worry about Nyland Green playing this week.
Yeah, I don't either.
We'll touch on that in just a second. But
yeah, I don't see either of them. Maybe Brock gets in this game, but I would imagine it would be very similar to what he did in the last game and his previous appearance. I mean, he's played in 2 games and he's thrown 1 pass. He's done a lot more handing off of the ball than he has dropping back to make a throw. I think it's interesting. The guys that played in their first game this past weekend, there were 6 of them that made their appearance. And it isn't, now looking at that class of 2021 that signed the true freshmen, every one of them has played in a game this season. And so, good for Georgia to get those guys some of those opportunities, good for the starters to do their job so that those younger guys, those developmental dogs can get in the game. And so, I don't know that there's anyone, like Kirby said, assessing the play of some of those younger players is really tough because of the opponent and because of, maybe they flash against Charleston Southern, but that they're playing Charleston Southern and not a team of the caliber that they will play in the playoffs or the SEC championship or whatnot. Georgia Tech, closer, but still not to that caliber. I mean, they're a Power 5 team, but they're not an Alabama caliber team. They're not a Ohio State or a Cincinnati or Notre Dame or whoever Georgia would play in the playoffs. So, he said there's nobody that screamed, "Play me over the guy in front of me." And I think that says about all you need to know about the freshmen that got in the game this past weekend and the freshmen that could have an opportunity to get in the game this weekend. Even some of the guys that have burned their red shirts, they've done so because they've played primarily on special teams more so than having a real role in the success of this offense or defense. I mean, Brock Bowers and A.D. Mitchell, obviously they've had their role. They've been healthy. They've combined for 877 yards, 10 scores, 57 receptions, 11 scores if you want to add in Bowers' rushing touchdown there. I think that Javon Bullard has made an impact. Jamon Dumas-Johnson has made an impact. Smile Munden has made an impact. But those guys, more so than Bullard maybe more so than others, having played some with the first team at Star. But Dumas-Johnson, Munden, Lassiter, Chambliss, those guys are guys that are making their impact known on special teams and more so than in the actual offense or defense. They're burning their red shirt that way rather than, being a key player on this Georgia team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as I mentioned, we should touch real quick on the Nyland Green situation. Arrested early Wednesday morning, booked into Athens Clark County Jail around 3 a.m. 5 counts, including 3 felony counts, 2 possession of a weapon in a school safety zone counts, as well as a second degree criminal damage to property, which is also a felony count, 2 misdemeanor counts of reckless conduct. Looks like this was an incident involving a BB gun and potentially a broken window. If it feels familiar, it should, because Julian Rochester and Chad Clay went through the same thing several years ago. Julian and Chad went through a pretrial diversion program, had all the charges dropped. No big deal in the ultimate scheme of things. But, hey, that's the news and that's what we have to report. So, I hate it for the kid. Somebody said on the board, why was this a felony charge for a BB gun? I think that has way more to do with where this occurred rather than the type of weapon that was involved. But just a dumb decision, I think, is what all it was. And seems like a mistake that I guarantee Kirby will help him learn from. I promise you that. But something that overall in the grand scheme, I don't think makes is a big deal. I don't think it's going to, affect the future for Nyland or anything like that. It is what it is. A dumb decision, and be swept away, I would say, by this time next year. I don't think they're probably by the end of next summer, to be quite honest with you. I think that he'll go through that
probably by the beginning of spring, and in terms of his impact, in terms of its impact on the football field, at least.
Oh, it'll be nil. I think it'll be absolutely nil in terms of impact on the football field. So I hate it for the kid, but good learning opportunity, I suppose. Speaking of defensive backs, however, and moving out of the realm of Georgia Tech and Georgia this week, Georgia picks up a big commitment on Sunday. That is consensus 5-star defensive back Jaheem Singletary out of Riverside High School in Jacksonville, Florida. If you've watched this show, if you've followed DawgsHQ, if you've seen my Twitter, if you are at all associated with Georgia football recruiting, probably not a huge shock to you to see Jaheem Singletary end up in red and black. But hey, look, 5 stars are 5 stars, right? I mean, it's always a good feeling when you pick one up. It's always great for the future. And Jaheem Singletary, one of those guys who brings a lot to the field. Really think he can be an impact maker moving forward.
Yeah, this is certainly a position of need for Georgia. With the potential losses. I mean, a very similar story to what we said about when Julian Humphrey committed. This is a position of need for Georgia that they attacked hard in this recruiting class, the secondary as a whole, not necessarily just corner, but right now they've got 3 corners committed between Singletary, Humphrey, and Groves Killebrew. I think that they've, it's pretty clear that secondary has been an emphasis because of what they're likely to lose after this season. You've got Lewis Seen likely on his way out, Darian Kendrick on his way out. And I guess those are the only 2 guys that you're going to lose, but you've got a lot of guys that you could lose. And odds are you're going to lose at least a couple of them, if not all of them. And Chris Smith is someone who has the ability to come back and very well could, but at the same time, very well could test the waters. Latavius Brini, same boat. Amir Speed, same boat. William Poole is a guy that, hasn't made a huge impact at Georgia during his time in Athens, but certainly is at least big from a depth perspective because you've seen him get in games this season, late in the games, and make impact plays. So I think that, knowing that you're potentially going to lose those 6 guys, and that's before you even potentially have a transfer, from a younger guy that you weren't expecting. I think it's very clear that this had to be an emphasis for Georgia in this recruiting class. And we've seen it over the last 2 commitments between Singletary and Humphrey.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What I like about Humphrey, especially when you're talking about,
you mean Singletary?
Singletary, because because he fits into this mold. Keely Ringo, that big long guy. Jaheem, not as fast as Keely, but similarly long. A couple big guys, and I think Jaheem, long impact maker, aggressive when the ball's in the air. I really like that about him. He's a guy who uses his hands well. He can hand fight with you, and causes a lot of breakups that way. So, look, Georgia's been chasing the guy for a long time. Ohio State wanted the guy. He was committed there at one point. Florida wanted a piece of him. But once he backed off of that Ohio State commitment, this one was all Bulldogs. You got to credit, really several members of this coaching staff. Kirby Smart was instrumental in this one. Jamal Adai, obviously, as the defensive backs coach. But, kudos and probably hats off most to Will Muschamp. I think he did a fantastic job. You can go read the comments over at DawgsHQ from Singletary, Chad Simmons with some insight over there. But, Will Muschamp, really a key part of this one. And he has been, I think, for several of these guys in this cycle. So impressive job. Hats off to Coach Boone for sealing the deal on a few of these guys.
Yeah. Also worth noting that with this commitment, Georgia moved into the number 1 recruiting spot in the consensus team rankings, ahead of Alabama and Texas A&M. They're going to have some tough competition here coming up with those 2 schools trending in the recruitment of several different, high caliber players. Jake, do you think they finish off with the number 1 class, or do you think that the Crimson Tide or Aggies pass them in
Well, it's going to go all the way to February, right? I mean, it'll go past that signing day. So I think a lot of it's determined by what happens as the ultimate result of the college football season. I think if Georgia were to win the national championship, then yeah, I think that's probably a slam dunk for them. I think that they'll probably get some unexpected guys or some guys that, maybe lean in, or undecided, kind of flip-flopping around. I think that could really help convince some guys. But, look, Alabama is Alabama when it comes to recruiting. Like you said, Texas A&M really on the tear as well. I think it's going to come down to Georgia and Alabama in the end. And like I said, I think postseason results may be the ultimate determining factor as to what kids end up deciding to do. But Georgia with a very real shot at it. And, that's – I talked about this on the Bill Shanks show yesterday. That's when you're talking about getting into that self-replicating monster. You're moving away from the idea of rebuild, and it's all about reload. And Georgia certainly setting themselves up that way. You're the number one team. Now you're bringing in a number one class. That's the way to keep that all kind of perpetuating. So
absolutely. And look, if Georgia doesn't end up with the number one class, which is, possible. I mean, looking at things right now, Alabama has more 5-star commits, more 4-star commits, but less commits overall. They've got 19 to Georgia's 23. And there's some 3-stars in there for Georgia, but there's some guys that may be undervalued in terms of the way that the recruiting industry sees them. Got to give credit to Kirby Smart in the way that they have, during his entire time at Georgia, that his staffs have evaluated players of that caliber, brought them in and developed them into the players that they are today. I mean, you saw it with Eric Stokes. Sure. Let's not forget that Jordan Davis was in that same category. Sure. Tay Crowder is another guy. So it's not, it's not a knock on Georgia for the 3 stars. It's helping them right now. But that could be, the deciding factor between, what Georgia ending up with the number 1 or number 2 class, in terms of its competition with Alabama there. But also, like you said, I do think that the outcome of SEC championship, college football playoffs could have a big impact in this. I mean, we already know that we're going to see Alabama and Georgia square off on the field this season. If Georgia is able to get over that hump, I think that's a, big check mark for them on the recruiting trail, saying, kids don't have to think, oh, can I go to Georgia and can I beat Alabama? They'll be able to see it, which they haven't been able to see before. They've been able to see that they can compete with them. But I think that being able to beat them would be a huge step in the right direction for Kirby Smart, and certainly something that he could sell on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that would be it's one less question you have to answer, right? And I think that you want to erase all doubt in everybody's mind when it comes to recruiting. So yeah, I think that it's crucial to remember that we're getting ready to move into All-Star season. And so we're probably due up to see some shifts when it comes to the rankings. We just had a big ranking update over it on 3, but make sure to keep eyes on it after the Army Bowl and the Under Armour All-American game. Those things are going to really help dictate a lot of this, because that's when you really get to see elite competition versus elite competition. A lot of these guys, fair or foul, don't play the best competition in high school. They're amazing for that reason. They're the best athletes in their region and sometimes in their states. But how does it translate when you're playing guys who are just as good as you? So I think that it's always interesting to see how things feather themselves out after All-Star season. All right. I think that's it for me. Palm, you got anything else, buddy?
Jake, one big important question, since we're putting this one out on Thursday, we're talking about it on Wednesday. Give me your ideal Thanksgiving plate.
Ooh, ideal Thanksgiving plate. For me, I want some turkey, for sure. Now I do want a piece of ham as well, though. And I want the honey glazed ham. I like the brown sugar honey thing. To be honest with you, other than that, I don't really need shit else but dressing. I want the rest of the plate filled with dressing. I eat dressing and maybe a little cranberry sauce, the canned kind. I don't need your fancy homemade cranberry sauces. Just open up the can of Ocean Spray, dump that gelatinous piece of cranberry out, and let me mix it in with the dressing. But I'm a dressing freak. My big thing is what I like to do, make a whole other pan of dressing.
Dressing, not stuffing.
I don't acknowledge the existence of stuffing. Stuffing is not real, in my opinion. I don't know who eats stuffing. I don't associate with people. I don't associate with people. Please tune out of this podcast if you like stuffing. But
just go ahead and unsubscribe on 3 in general if you're a stuffing person.
But I like to take the dressing, put it in the fridge, get it cold, let all the flavors marry, cut that thing up like just a hunk, and just munch on it, dude. That's to me, that's the best part of Thanksgiving.
The leftover sandwich, the Thanksgiving sandwich where you just throw it all together on either for dinner or on the next day. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a classic.
The cheap, soft white bread.
If you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I will say my favorite thing about Thanksgiving has got to be the sweet potato casserole. I mean, you put some marshmallows on top. Man, that is good.
Paul's getting excited over here.
We got to wrap this thing up because I'm getting hungry just talking about it. But yeah, Thanksgiving, always a fun holiday. A former offensive lineman in me comes out ready to eat, ready to devour some turkey, put that gravy on it. Dressing and like you said, I want a little bit of ham, little bit of beef, not all turkey because
beef. What kind of beef?
Any beef.
Now that is an offensive lineman if I've ever heard it, folks. I'm with you, man. I love Thanksgiving for this reason. It's to me, we don't eat dressing enough in this country.
Family. I mean, food, football, family. What more could you want? Well,
and one of the best things too, I think about the Thanksgiving holiday, and I'm getting ready to go do it myself, is going and having some beers with old friends when they come into town the night before Thanksgiving. Always a great tradition as well. Good to get everybody together, say hey, and that way you don't have to worry about it around Christmas either. So,
last question: are you in or out on pumpkin pie?
Oh, definitely in on pumpkin pie for sure. Big dollop of of whipped cream on top. Get you Cool Whip. Throw that on there. But absolutely a pumpkin pie guy. No problem with pumpkin pie whatsoever. Really
more so than pecan pie.
Yeah, I'd probably take it over pecan. I both have their place. I think both are special. To me, pumpkin pie, the better Thanksgiving dessert. Pecan pie, one of those things you can have whenever. You don't have a pumpkin pie in April, but you could have a pecan pie.
I like putting a little bit of both on my plate, and just like you said, this is a holiday where you got to come ready to eat. So, if you're listening to this early Thursday morning, just hold out till you're ready to go. Don't fill yourself because the food is going to be worth it.
Yeah, wear the stretchy pants. Get ready to loosen the belt a little bit, and get the nap in. It's crucial as well. Get the Cowboys game on. Thankful that we don't have to watch the Falcons play on Thanksgiving, for God's sakes. I love it. Love Thanksgiving, and thankful for you, Palm. Appreciate you and all you do over at DawgsHQ for us, brother.
Right back at you, Jake.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this edition of Dog Walk Talk. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving and look forward to speaking with you after Clean Old Fashioned Hate. Hopefully we'll be talking about Georgia wrapping up a perfect regular season and looking ahead into the matchup with Alabama that everybody's been anticipating for so long. For myself and Palmer Toms, this has been Dog Walk Talk presented by DawgsHQ. We'll see you later.